Hi, folks. Welcome back to the Twilight Zone we now call America, where criminals are victims, victims are villains, and the only thing more delusional than the headlines are the people defending them. We live in a time when grief is now considered inappropriate if it dares to make the accused feel uncomfortable, and justice only counts if your family throws a first press conference. Just ask Jeff Metcalf, the father of 17-year-old victim Austin Metcalf, who got kicked out of a press conference held by the family of his son's accused killer, Karmelo Anthony. That's right. The guy whose child was stabbed to death is now the one being publicly scolded for poor manners. Today's clips give us a front row seat to the emotional gymnastics routine the left has been perfecting. Police escorting a grieving dad while activists line up to moralize about dignity. You couldn't write satire this absurd. It's moral relativism with a megaphone, and the circus only gets louder. So let's dive into this clown car and take a closer look, starting with the moment in question, Jeff Metcalf being ejected from Karmelo Anthony's press conference.
If you take a look at your screen now, what you are looking at is video of Jeff Metcalf being escorted out of the co-working space where the Next Gen Action Network's office is by Dallas Police. You see that there. Jeff Metcalf, the gentleman who was wearing the sunglasses and the blue shirt, who's being escorted out, is the father of Austin Metcalf, who was the teenager who was stabbed and killed with tracking to the school. He is being asked to leave, escorted out of a press conference that is being held where the parents of the child who is accused of killing Metcalf's child are expected to speak.
As we just saw, Austin Metcalf's father, Jeff Metcalf, was asked to leave Karmelo Anthony's press conference, and amazingly enough, he managed to not stab anyone on the way out. Interesting how that works, huh? Look, apparently in this day and age, grief is only acceptable if it doesn't interfere with the accused killer's family's media rollout. Jeff didn't speak, didn't protest, didn't lash out. He just showed up and silently waited on the sidelines. But that alone was too much for the Next Action Network, who promptly had him removed like he was a threat. And then came the real kicker. Karmelo Anthony's parents, Andrew, Anthony, and Kala Hayes, refused to even begin the press conference while Jeff was in the room. What exactly were they scared of? A man who lost his son, or a moment of truth that might make their whole "we're the actual victims here" routine fall apart on camera? It's a truly twisted reversal where the family of a murdered teen gets silenced so the parents of the accused can center themselves in the story. This isn't about justice. It's a clear PR theater with a moral compass turning like a fidget spinner. Oh, and things did indeed take a turn as soon as Karmelo Anthony's representative, Minister Dominique Alexander, started opening his mouth.
And all I'm going to say, so it don't be asked later, is that was disrespectful and just shows you all the character who is not invited. He knows that it's inappropriate to be near this family, but he did it. And so I say to people, actions speak louder than words. Okay? What he has failed into is the political operatives that want to make this thing a political thing of hate, yet bigotry, and yet racism. We have conservative operatives that have been posting non-stop about this case. It is outright disrespectful. We haven't been doing it. The Next Generation Action Network has been here, popular and unpopular. So regardless of what's going on, that was disrespectful. Disrespectful. And I will leave it to y'all to define it.
As if this case wasn't already steeped in tragedy, now we have the added circus of moral inversion brought to you by Minister Dominique Alexander, a man somehow allergic to both logic and basic human decency. In his mind, the real villain isn't a teenager charged with stabbing Austin Metcalf to death and leaving him to die in his twin brother's arms. No, the villain is Austin's father, Jeff Metcalf, for daring to show up at a press conference, not to protest, not to yell, just show up. Alexander calls this a disrespect to the dignity of his son. Let's pause on that. Imagine losing your child in the most brutal way possible, then being publicly shamed by a so-called activist for having the audacity to care. The rhetorical sleight of hand here is astonishing. He flips the victim's role, claims the moral high ground, and tries to exile the father from his own grief, all while hiding behind word salad like dignity and appropriateness. It's the activist version of gaslighting, delegitimize emotion, deflect scrutiny, and weaponize decorum. Alexander then takes a sharp left turn into conspiracy land, accusing conservative operatives of politicizing the case, because apparently anyone demanding basic justice and accountability must be part of a shadowy Republican cabal. That's a textbook red herring. Distract from the uncomfortable fact that a young man is dead and the suspect is now out on house arrest after allegedly stabbing him during a petty argument by throwing around buzzwords like bigotry and racism. No evidence needed, no specifics offered. Just throw the labels like spaghetti and hope something sticks. This isn't advocacy, it's narrative control. It's about shifting focus from the facts, like the police report stating that Anthony told Metcalf to touch me and see what happens before fatally stabbing him, to a carefully constructed victimhood theater where accountability is oppressive and silence is strategy. And let's not forget the grotesque irony of Alexander framing this as an issue of character. Jeff Metcalf didn't disrupt the event. He didn't speak. He didn't even get a chance to grieve in public before being escorted out like a criminal. Meanwhile, the parents of the accused murderer refused to speak until he was gone. What does that tell you? If their case was so airtight, their conscience so clear, why are they so rattled by the mere presence of a grieving father? And let's be real, this wasn't about safety. This wasn't about dignity. This was purely about optics. The wrong kind of pain showed up in the room, and the script didn't have lines for it. So they had to cut the scene. And Dominique Alexander can posture all he wants about actions speak louder than words, but in this case, the only action that spoke was the father showing up quietly, solemnly, courageously, and being thrown out so the defendant's family could monopolize a microphone. That's not justice. That's censorship in a designer suit. And look, the irony is almost too thick to cut, because all of this is happening just days after Jeff Metcalf publicly forgave Karmelo Anthony for allegedly murdering his son. He told several news outlets that he harbored no hatred toward Karmelo Anthony, repeatedly emphasizing that this tragedy wasn't about race, and even defended the accused in the face of public outrage. And yet he's the one being painted as the disruptive presence. The man showed more grace in his darkest moment than most people muster in a lifetime. But when he quietly attended a press conference held by the family of his son's alleged killer, he was treated like a threat, lectured about dignity, and escorted out by police. That's not just hypocrisy. It's a grotesque inversion of morality where public forgiveness is met with public humiliation. The truth is, the only dignity being disrespected here is the dignity of a father's grief. And the only thing more inappropriate than his presence was the shameless attempt to silence it.
But Frisco ISD has notified of their intent to expel Karmelo Anthony from school 1 month before his high school graduation. That just shows me that Frisco ISD is trying to push off the blame. And what I have not heard the media say, as many media outlets have asked us what went on, I'm trying to find how many of y'all have asked the superintendent or one single board of trustee, why didn't you cancel or postpone? With weather in that magnitude, you couldn't have a track meet in rain or thunderstorm or clouds. Y'all are the media. Ask your journalists, your weather journalists, how the weather was that day and that time. Y'all do that research. Because as a person who is the administrator of your children, you are responsible for the safety of the children. And so it seems as if Frisco ISD is trying to push this off by making this decision that they do not have to make.
Oh, we're actually doing this now. Blaming the weather for a murder. Strap in, folks, because this clown representing Karmelo Anthony just took gaslighting to meteorological heights. In the most bewildering 45 seconds of an already unhinged press conference, Dominique Alexander shifts the focus From a fatal stabbing to cloud coverage. Not the act of violence, not the weapon, not even the events leading up to the confrontation. No, the real culprit, according to this rhetorical masterclass in deflection, is the Frisco Independent School District for having the audacity to hold a track meet on a rainy day. You can't make this up. Just your basic causal fallacy, just because a track meet happened in the rain and a murder took place during that event, that obviously means that one caused the other. Right, folks? That's like blaming your car's air conditioning for a highway accident because it was turned on when the crash occurred. It's truly desperate, illogical, and frankly insulting to anyone's intelligence. And let's not forget what actually happened that day. As reported in police records, Austin Metcalf asked Karmelo Anthony to move out of his school's tent during a rain delay. Not during a lightning storm, not in the middle of a tornado, a rain delay. That's when Karmelo allegedly warned him, touch me and see what happens, before fatally stabbing him in front of dozens of witnesses. The suggestion that the school district is liable for this is a sleight of hand meant to shift accountability away from the only person who allegedly made the decision to escalate a verbal exchange into deadly violence. Dominique Alexander also conveniently smuggles in a false equivalence, drawing a parallel between school administrators scheduling decisions with criminal intent, as though not postponing a track meet is somehow morally adjacent to murder. That's not advocacy, that's narrative laundering. And while we're at it, let's talk about the appeal to emotion layered throughout Dominique's entire rant. He invokes the safety of children, accusing the district of endangering kids by holding an outdoor event. But it wasn't the clouds or puddles that killed Austin Metcalf. It was a knife, a choice made by a peer. The weather didn't do it. Thunder doesn't stab. Then comes the real kicker. Dominique Alexander accuses Frisco ISD of pushing off the blame by expelling Anthony a month before graduation. First of all, what school district wouldn't expel a student charged with first-degree murder on their campus grounds? That's not scapegoating. It's basic policy, the kind meant to keep other students safe. If anything, the real question is, why wasn't he expelled immediately? Finally, notice how Dominique Alexander repeatedly tells reporters to ask your weather journalist. That's not a call for transparency. It's just a clumsy attempt to redirect scrutiny. It's classic whataboutism meant to paralyze a conversation with irrelevant hypotheticals so we forget what the actual issue is. A teenage boy was murdered and someone is standing trial for it. So no, the clouds didn't do it. The drizzle didn't make Anthony do what he did. And the school district didn't summon a storm that somehow triggered a fatal altercation. The only thing this press conference revealed so far was the defense's strategy. If the facts don't help your client, blame the sky.
And that is your constitutional right? It's people out here reminding us of the black struggle in America.
Or blame racism, apparently, because when all else fails, when the facts are inconvenient, the narrative's falling apart, and public sympathy's running on fumes, the default escape hatch is to invoke the black struggle in America. That's what we got here, folks. A teenager allegedly stabs another teen to death at a school event, and somehow we're being told it's not about violence, personal responsibility, or justice. It's a reminder of systemic oppression. Give us a break. Now, let's be very clear. There's absolutely nothing about this case that justifies turning a fatal stabbing into a civil rights metaphor. No one's constitutional rights include sticking a knife into someone during an argument. And equating this with the black struggle isn't just dishonest. It's offensive to every legitimate victim of racial injustice who fought for dignity, not a diversion. This is classic emotional appeal all over the place. Take a tragic event, strip it of context, and plug it into a broader narrative in hopes of shielding your side from scrutiny. It's a bait and switch. Don't look at the weapon, don't look at the act. Just focus on race and let your moral outrage do the rest. And here's the problem. Karmelo Anthony isn't being prosecuted because he's black. He's being prosecuted because a 17-year-old boy is dead and witnesses say Karmelo did it, and Karmelo himself confessed to police. So all that to say that the real injustice here isn't racial bias, it's how quickly the actual victim gets erased from the story so the accused can claim the spotlight of oppression. That's not justice. That's PR disguised as protest. And the more they lean into this narrative, the more transparent it becomes if the facts don't help. Reframe the case until victim and aggressor switch roles. But rational people are not playing along. This wasn't Jim Crow. It was a high school track meet and someone's son never came home. That's not systemic racism. That's a tragedy. And twisting it into a political talking point doesn't heal anything. It just adds insult to fatal injury. Anyway, Karmelo Anthony's family later spoke at the press conference where his mother broke down in tears, not over the fact that a 17-year-old is dead, but over how they're being treated online. According to her, the real tragedy here is that people are saying mean things on the internet. Her husband had to take a leave from work and their mental health is suffering. Look, no one's denying that this situation is painful for everyone involved, but let's not rewrite the story. Their son is out on house arrest after allegedly stabbing a kid to death in front of multiple witnesses. The victim died in his twin brother's arms, and yet somehow we're being asked to view the accused murderer's family as the primary victims. She goes on to say they raised Karmelo in a two-parent, God-first, Constitution-loving home, which is great, but last I checked, none of those things exempt you from the consequences of your actions. It's a classic attempt to flip the script, present yourself as morally bulletproof so no one questions what actually happened. But here's a hard truth. This case isn't about how well someone was raised. It's about a life that was taken. And no amount of tears, prayers, or patriotic branding can change any of that. Oh, and speaking of harassment, let's check in on the Metcalf family, huh? How are they doing?
Kind of breaking news and an update on the deadly stabbing in Frisco. Frisco police just confirmed a swatting call was made tonight to an address belonging to the victim's father. Now, that's a prank call designed to bring a lot of police to a scene. Tonight, Jeff Metcalf confirms to WFAA he wasn't home when it happened, but he did arrive about 5 minutes later.
And there you have it, folks. Just hours after Karmelo Anthony's self-appointed spokesman took the mic to publicly smear Austin Metcalf's grieving father, calling his presence disrespectful and accusing him of politicizing his own son's death, Jeff Metcalf gets swatted in the middle of the night. For those who don't know, that's when someone calls in a fake emergency to send armed police to your home, typically saying there is a hostage situation or someone is armed and dangerous with the intent of creating a violent confrontation involving the target and the police. Now, to be clear, even though this newscast called it a prank, it's not a prank. It's an assassination attempt disguised as a 911 call. So let that sink in. The father of a murdered child already being villainized by the media circus whipped up by representatives of the teen who killed his son simply for quietly showing up to a press conference is now being terrorized in his own home. And yet, we're still being spoon-fed the narrative that he's the one crossing the line. This is what happens when activists trade facts for fan fiction. The mob mentality replaces moral clarity. They frame the victim's family as the aggressors, cry oppression at every turn, and then sit back while their supporters escalate into real-world violence. And the worst part, no mainstream outrage, no think pieces, no marches for Austin Metcalf, just silence. This isn't justice, it's intimidation. And if you're still confused about who's the actual victim in this story, maybe ask yourself which family is being hunted at home for daring to grieve out loud. Meanwhile, people are launching Karmelo Anthony-inspired merch drops like this is some kind of celebrity comeback tour. That's right, new free Melo shirts are now being sold online, complete with Karmelo's face on them, courtesy of someone named DJ Fatboy Easy, because apparently nothing says justice like monetizing a murder case through streetwear. One photo shows Karmelo's cousin rocking the shirt next to him after Karmelo's release, proudly captioning, "No more free Melo, little cuz is home, God is good." Really? God is good because the kid who allegedly stabbed someone to death is now back home. Let's be very clear. This isn't activism. This isn't awareness. This is a PR stunt disguised as a movement complete with merch and marketing, turning a homicide charge into a hashtag like this is some kind of underdog story instead of a high schooler left bleeding to death in his twin brother's arms. And the fact that it's unclear how close DJ Fatboy Easy even is to the family just makes it worse. Because now we've entered the cloud chasing phase of this case, where internet nobodies slap a murder suspect's face on a hoodie and call it solidarity. This isn't justice. This is branding a tragedy, and the people doing it should be ashamed. This is where we are now, where grief is punished, justice is marketed, and reality is whatever the loudest narrative says it is. So ask yourself, When did we start confusing moral clarity with emotional theater? When did truth become optional and victimhood a branding opportunity? If a father can be villainized for mourning, if a murder charge can be turned into merch, what does that say about the society we're building or destroying? Don't just listen to the noise. Question who's turning up the volume and why. You tell me what you think in the comments down below. Have a terrific day. Peace.